Lewis Hamilton rolled into Silverstone with high hopes, banking on his favourite track to inject some much-needed momentum into what's been a rocky debut season with Ferrari. And on paper, he delivered, bagging his best result of the year with a respectable fourth-place finish. But it wasn't the comeback story he'd hoped for, especially with Nico Hülkenberg celebrating his first-ever F1 podium just ahead of him. After the checkered flag, Hamilton didn't hold back, slamming the SF25 as the most difficult car I've driven here and describing its handling as constantly snappy in mixed conditions. But that blunt verdict didn't sit well with team boss Fred Vasseur, who swiftly rejected his star driver's claims. Vasseur not only questioned the accuracy of Hamilton's comments, but hinted that the Briton's frustrations might be clouding his judgment, setting the stage for an increasingly tense dynamic inside Maranello. After the race, Hamilton didn't hold back. He pointed the finger at Ferrari's strategy team and questioned the performance of the SF25 machine he's been handed. "We gave up way too much with strategy," he said, clearly frustrated. "I don't even know how I went from P4 to P8 after the pit stop. That really messed things up." He added that he tried an early stop to pull off a big undercut, but the car just wasn't cooperating. "Man, it was tough out there. This car hates mixed conditions. I had a huge snap in turn 3, ran wide. It cost me so much time, so many little mistakes. It was just chaos." When Lewis Hamilton described his Ferrari over the team radio as snappy, many were left wondering just how bad things really felt behind the wheel. After the race, he pulled no punches in clarifying exactly what he meant. "It's the worst feeling," he admitted. "You can't relax, you can't trust the rear. It's just constantly on edge. You've got no confidence in the car." Hamilton didn't mince words, calling the SF25 unbelievably tricky, and Lewis made it clear, something has to change. He urged Ferrari to learn from this year's issue so that next year's machine doesn't inherit the same unpredictable behaviour. When those comments reached team boss Fred Vasseur, he responded with a knowing smile. "I think Max said the same," Vasseur quipped, seemingly brushing off Hamilton's critique. But then he added a subtle jab. He said on the radio the car was very snappy, but that's not always true. Vasseur didn't deny the SF25 had its challenges, but he wasn't entirely buying Lewis' version of events either. He pointed out that only McLaren so far have managed to build a car that's genuinely consistent across changing track conditions and layouts. For everyone else, including Ferrari, tyre wear and circuit evolution are wreaking havoc on performance from one stint to the next. Still, Fred didn't close the door on further analysis. "Let me discuss this with Lewis," he said, signalling that behind closed doors, the conversation at Maranello is far from over. In Italy, Ferrari isn't just a Formula One team, it's a symbol of national pride, and with that status comes relentless scrutiny. So, when Lewis Hamilton publicly questioned the Scuderia's race strategy and called out the flaws in the SF25, you can bet those comments lit up headlines across the country. For team boss Fred Vasseur, it's exactly the kind of storm he hoped to avoid, without having to muzzle his drivers. Vasseur didn't deny Ferrari had their missteps. He acknowledged that on a day as chaotic as Silverstone, plenty of teams likely walked away thinking, "We should have done things differently," and Ferrari were no exception. "I'm not sure pure pace was the problem today," Vasseur said, defending the car's raw speed. But for Charles, his race was pretty much over on lap 1. The decision to pit early for slick tyres didn't pay off the way they'd hoped, and as Vasseur pointed out, being stuck in dirty air only made things worse. Once out in clean air, the Ferrari drivers looked far more competitive, but by then, the damage was done. The Ferrari boss didn't sugarcoat it. "It was a tough weekend, especially when it came to strategy," he admitted. "Everyone has regrets, maybe not Norris or Hülkenberg, but for the rest of us, it's one of those races where you always feel like pitting one lap earlier or later could have changed everything." Still, Vasseur wasn't completely dismissive of Hamilton's criticism. In fact, he agreed that strategy let them down in moments that mattered. But now his focus is shifting towards qualifying and towards salvaging the championship campaign. Because for Ferrari, surviving Monday's Italian headlines might be tough, but falling behind in the standings would be even worse. As the Grand Prix wound down, Nico Hülkenberg found himself glancing in his mirrors more than he would have liked. Lewis Hamilton was charging hard. The pressure was real. But then, Ferrari handed him a lifeline by pitting Hamilton for fresh tyres at a critical moment. "I think Ferrari kind of helped us out," Hülkenberg admitted after the race, grinning from ear to ear. "We stopped one lap later than Lewis for slicks and gained something like 10 seconds. That gap made all the difference. From then on, it was just about survival. 10, 11, 12 laps. It felt endless, but I knew if we just kept it on the road and stayed sharp, the podium was ours, and what a moment it was. After 15 years of racing, 208 Grands Prix, and a career full of near misses, Hülkenberg finally finally stood on an F1 podium for the first time. It was a storybook moment for the German, and a heartbreaking one for Hamilton. For the British 7-time world champion, Silverstone has always been a stronghold, with 11 consecutive podium finishes. But that run came to a painful end this weekend, just months into his rocky debut season with Ferrari. Charles Leclerc didn't sugarcoat the team's struggles either. The lack of pace, he said, was the real problem, not just the pit stop calls. Honestly, we were nowhere the whole race, Leclerc admitted. I was a second off the pace, and on top of that, I made a lot of mistakes. The Monegasque driver also held himself accountable for the early tyre gamble, which saw him switch to slicks while the track was still slippery. That was on me, he said. I thought the first and second sectors looked ready for slicks. The third sector was still wet. In hindsight, not the right call. I'm not happy with that decision. I saw it coming. I genuinely thought the track would dry out much quicker than it did, Charles Leclerc reflected. Clearly, it didn't, and we weren't alone in that misjudgment. A lot of us assumed the conditions would improve faster. That miscalculation played a big part in why our race went sideways. But Leclerc wasn't just reflecting, he was demanding answers. The mood in the Ferrari garage was tense, with Charles pushing for clarity before heading home that night. Honestly, our biggest issue wasn't just the tyre call, it was the sheer lack of pace, he said. And I want to know why. I've asked the team to dig deep and get me those answers. I'm not leaving until I understand what went wrong. Meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton managed to claw back a sliver of pride in front of a roaring home crowd at Silverstone. After a string of underwhelming Saturdays, he finally put together a stronger qualifying performance, reducing his deficit to Charles Leclerc to 4-8. It was a much-needed morale boost, but only a small one. For Hamilton, the frustration is written all over his post-race interviews. The handling issues, the erratic strategy calls, the lack of confidence in the car. He's not just raising concerns, he's sounding the alarm. On the other side of the garage, Charles Leclerc is equally dissatisfied, pointing to a mysterious lack of pace and costly mistakes that have left him bewildered. He's demanding answers, and not later. He wants them now, before heading home, before the team regroups. And caught in the middle of it all is Fred Vasseur, the man tasked with restoring Ferrari's glory. But right now he's walking a tightrope. On one side, he must publicly back his engineering and strategy teams. On the other, he has two of the most high-profile drivers in the sport, openly questioning the very machinery and decisions under his leadership. Every comment, every result, every media soundbite tightens the tension in Maranello. Vasseur's project is ambitious, perhaps even championship-worthy on paper, but as of now, it's faltering under the combined weight of expectations, internal frustration, and a car that's proving far too unpredictable. With the media circling, fans demanding answers, and his drivers growing impatient, the pressure at Ferrari is building fast. And if something doesn't change soon, the cracks may only get wider. Do you think Lewis Hamilton was right to call out Ferrari so publicly, or is the SF25 not the problem, but the drivers pushing it beyond its limits?